Part of the legacy of slavery and Jim Crow in the U.S. is the legacy of income inequality in the U.S. What is your position on reparations to the descendants of slaves?
Well, as I just indicated, there are massive disparities that must be addressed. There is legislation that I like, introduced by Congressman Jim Clyburn. It's called the 10-20-30 legislation, which focuses federal resources in a very significant way on distressed communities, communities that have high levels of poverty. So as I've just indicated, I think we have to do everything that we can to end institutional racism in this country. It is not acceptable to me that the rate of childhood poverty among the African American community is over 30% in this country. That is beyond belief. That African Americans die from cancer at higher rates than whites. So we're going to do everything we can to put resources into distressed communities and improve lives for those people who have been hurt from the legacy of slavery.
So what is your position specifically on reparations? I asked the question because Elizabeth Warren, Julian Castro, they've indicated they want to support.
What does that mean? What do they mean? I'm not sure that anyone's very clear. What I've just said is that I think we must do everything that we can to address the massive level of disparity that exists in this country.
I'll tell you what they mean, because Elizabeth Warren has said black families have had a much steeper hill to climb. We need systematic structural changes to address that. Julian Castro has said, I have long thought that this country would be better off if we did find a way to do that. Reparations.
Well, I agree with what Elizabeth said.
So you would support reparations?
But read what she said. What does that mean? She means, I think, I don't want to put words into her mouth, is what I said. Okay? In other words, as a result of the legacy of slavery, you have massive levels of inequality. It has to be addressed, and it has to be addressed now.
It's clear that these questions are going to be very central to the debate in the 2020 election. But one of the biggest questions, when they're asked this question, is how, right? How exactly are you going to repay the debt of slavery, and who is going to repay the debt of slavery exactly?
This is exactly right. And Bernie Sanders said this last night on CNN. I mean, I'm sounding like a Bernie supporter here, but the fact is that Sanders is clearer on this than Kamala Harris or Elizabeth Warren. And when Kamala Harris is asked how, she immediately begins citing all sorts of kind of normal Democratic government programs that she'd like to see pushed anyway, which is not slavery reparations. That's just what we call the Democratic political agenda. The reality is that slavery reparations per se are completely unworkable. Even big advocates of it, like Ta-Nehisi Coates, have failed to come up with any actual metric for how exactly we'd go about doing that. What do you do with, for example, Barack Obama, whose father was black and not from the United States and therefore not having history with slavery, and a mother who is white? Would his family receive slavery reparations? How about Kamala Harris, whose father is Jamaican and mother is Indian? Does she receive slavery reparations? From whom? Does she receive slavery reparations from me? My great-grandparents got here in 1907, long after slavery was over, and lived their entire lives in the North, where Jim Crow was not in effect. It's almost impossible. I think not almost. It is impossible to come up with a fair metric for recompensing slavery 10 generations after slavery's end.